Hey everybody, welcome back to some more Wargamer Dragon Italy news. Now this time around we're actually going to take a look at two blog posts because I missed the last one as I was away for a week. And yeah, let's just take a look at it. Those are the last two actually detailing all the new units. Unlike with South Africa, they've actually put multiple categories together into one blog post, right? For example, in this case, we have vehicles, which includes tanks, anti-air, artillery, etc., etc. Whereas with South Africa, I believe they did it, I don't know, tab by tab basis. They did like artillery and anti-air, and they did tanks, etc. It was a lot more spread out. So yeah, we have two blog posts: vehicles and aircraft, which includes helicopters. Let's take a quick look at that, shall we? Yada yada yada. Random mutant gibberish. No, no, it's seriousness. If you want to read this, of course, you can read this for yourself. In general, of course, you can just read the entire thing for yourself and just close this video. But there's, of course, a few units in here or some stuff in there that is uh, maybe new, but we can still guesstimate some stuff, right? Usually, logistics is not very interesting, right? We have a Fiat, we have a M577. Let me actually do something like this. Yeah, no, on the left side is better. Why? Because Fiat is already in game in form of this, as well as the KM900, which is basically the same thing, just without any weapon. I can't type weaponry other than a 50 cal. Right, that is a Fiat. So presumably the Fiat CV and the transports will look like this or almost exactly like this. Very similar at the very least. And then there's also the AR-76, which seems to be a new model. They indicated new models by those names being bold, which is also already in the game. Not under this name, but I'm pretty sure it's the same Jeep as this thing here, meaning it will presumably have 120 km/h off-road speed, which, in my eyes, makes it the best Jeep in the game and a lot more. Uh, a lot more worth taking. I'm a Jeep CV hater, as you might or might not know. I hate Jeep CVs, but this is like one of the exceptions where, with some other exceptions, but the biggest exception where I would take Jeep CVs. Supply trucks, yeah, okay, whatever. Artillery, we have 122 millimeter napalm MLRS. Caliber here is irrelevant, or almost irrelevant. It might be exactly completely irrelevant. It might not be. I don't actually know for sure. What I'm saying is though, um, all napalm MLRS have 1 HE. Right. Let's take a look at this. For example, the North Korean PM24, right? 1 HE, 240 millimeters. Can see this? Yeah, you can. And if we look at the PH sets, right, 130 millimeter is still 1 HE. I'll be honest, I don't exactly. But I don't know whether the increased caliber leads to bigger flames. I think it might, but generally speaking, caliber is not a huge deal as much as rate of fire and the amount of rounds you can fire, as well as supply cost. And of course, reload time as well. If you reload fast between salvos, that's a big deal. So yeah, we shall see. If it was 30, it's gonna be an HE and smoke. It's gonna be pretty similar to the Lars 2. It has to have a bigger caliber, and when it comes to HE rounds, right, bigger caliber does definitely mean more boom. I don't know off the top of my head how big the caliber was. Might be 122 millimeters. Lars is like 112. It has 110. Yeah. Comparison, let's say I think the ARM 70 is like right there of being like decent without being horrible, right? Which is also 122 millimeter MLRS. So yeah, it does say the same launcher. M270 MLRS, we know it's going to be HE, which is only the second M270 with HE actually, right? We have two with cluster, with the UK one and the Norwegian one, and then three together with the Mars, right? We have actually only one HE M270, which is the French one. So this means that Italy will not have cluster MLRS. I have already seen a comment that I don't know if complain is like the big word, but at the very least they noticed or mentioned, well, why don't they get cluster MLRS? Which I guess is a fair point, but personally, why not? Give it some flavor. Give them some flavor, right? As we know already, Italy is a standalone faction. They said it in the very first post. There's also some in the vehicle category, as we will find out in Did I mention them later on? Let's see if they will. If not, I'll mention it. They have some M109s, M107s, and M110s. Those are gonna be almost certainly in one way or another already in the game, right? We have plenty of M109 categories. What we can see though is none of these M109s seem to be A5 ones or very modern ones. So we will presumably see basic M109s and some of the 80 or 100 point variants, something like that. M110, A2 we already have as well, and the M107 we only have twice. It's just, in my opinion, a very underrated unit. We also have, so we can basically expect those stats. Then you have a 3AG and a 4AG motor. They're standardized. And we have this thing here, which is basically gonna be a better 5AG motor. Assuming it's gonna have the same stats as this, as they mentioned that we no, they actually mentioned this. I'm not sure if that is the same thing as it is here. It might not be, but I'm gonna expect it has the same stats, or very similar stats to this, meaning it's not gonna be a cookie cutter copy of these 5AG stats. If you're a bit familiar with the game, you know motors are pretty much standardized, with the exception of the amount of rounds they carry. There's like two exceptions to that. One is a few 5AG motors, like the French one, which have better accuracy rate of fire, and then there's a Vasilek. But with those few exceptions, they're pretty much standardized. But this reads like this is going to be one of the good 5AG motors. Hawk 1 and 2, we have those in game as well. 60 and 70 point Hawks respectively. Spada Aspide. Now this Alright. I have to be careful with what I say here. Not because I'm gonna use mean words, but maybe because I say things that I might not be allowed to say yet. Basically what they're saying is, why am I going for AMRAM? NASAMS. It's gonna be a less accurate NASAMS, which is not exactly correct. How do I put this? It's not completely inaccurate, but let me put it this way: it's missing an important piece of what also differentiates the Spada from the NASAMS. There's a bit more to it than it just not. I'm stumbling over my own words, I know, but it's just I gotta be careful. There's more to it than it just being a bit less accurate. I think. Quadrinta ACM 52. This is Denmark has it in support, I believe, which is this thing here. Almost certainly, it's a quad 50 cal on a new model as well, but a track mounted 50 cal, quad 50 cal, which we have here as well. A CDM 25, which is completely new. It is on an M113. We can actually see it right here on an M113 with quad 24 millimeters. I have no idea what this will look like. We have dual 25s on this. No, those are actually just 20 millimeters, actually. I presume the TCM as well, right? Yeah, it's the same gun. Yeah, I have no idea. This might essentially just be like, stat-wise, it might look something like above 3. Except, of course, it's tracked. But very good rate of fire, very long range burst, and just non-radar low tier spec type of deal, maybe. We shall see. And of course, we're gonna get an automatic. Now, here's another important bit. They say you get the automatic, but now whether that's deserved or not, it's not for me to judge. Sturdier 040 MPT chassis. Now, from what I understand, an 040 is just a glorified Leopard 1. Under licensed production in Italy, and I think it was supposed to be an export tank. So it's gonna be essentially an automatic with more armor. Presumably more front armor specifically. Maybe a bit more side, who knows. Which is a big deal. A very big deal. Because this might mean that, unlike the Danish automatic, if you suddenly meet 3 or 4 autocannon vehicles at close range, the normal automatic will probably lose unless those are like Rardens or something, or they're panicked. New automatic might not, because those autocannons either deal a lot less damage or might suddenly not pen in some of these situations. So that's gonna be scary. Now, another big thing is it gonna have more than 6 armor? Given that the automatic has 3 armor, compared to a very basic Leopard, which has, I think, a base of 6. Wargame values, or tends to, from what I gather, value third armor a lot more than hull armor, which is why some of those Leopard 1s have pretty acceptable armor, even though Leopard 1s are basically paper thin. So I'm gonna hope and assume it's not gonna have more than 6 armor. Why is that 6 armor so important? Because there's a lot of seed missiles that have 20 AP. With the exception of the no, it is a Super Cobra, right? With the exception of the Super Cobra, which has 16 AP on its seed missiles, which is an exception, as I said, there are quite a few that have just 20 AP. For example, the Raven. Where's the Raven? Is it? Yeah, 20 AP. The Harm has 20 AP. The Harm is found on a lot of seed missiles, a lot of seaplanes, excuse me. Now the Prowler, for example, is 26, and the Shrike, what does the Shrike have? Shrike also has 20, although this one specifically is triple fired. But ECR uses the Harm. South Korea also uses the Harm. I don't think any of the Red 4 coalitions have something that's lower than 24 AP. This is 28. The KA-52 has 24. The Big 25 is also 28, I think. This is 28. There's SC-24. This is 28. 24. Wait, is that the same thing? 25 MPU? It's the same missile as on the... I never realized that, actually. That's funny. Same missile on the K-52 and the Polish Su-22. Czechoslovakia. I think there's also just a single SC-24 missile, right? It is. And China has infamously 30 AP. So yeah. I assume it's not gonna have more than 6 armor, but if it does, or if it did, would be an issue. It already does, or might very much be an issue, having more than the already incredibly strong and honestly overpowered automatic, more front armor. It's already an issue, but we shall see. Tanks. M47. We already have that in the game as well for Yugoslavia. I'm just gonna assume it's gonna look very, very similar from exactly the same. It's actually a pretty solid cheap spam tank. You have 3 HE, 8 RPM, you have a 50 cal, 4 front armor, acceptable, good autonomy actually, acceptable off-road speed. It's a pretty like decent spam tank and just against infantry and like low tier IFVs or APCs. Yeah, it works. A few M60s. We have the A1. I don't know, similar to the one used by the USMC. So it's gonna be similar to the presumably M60A1 USMC. There's also the A01 and the A01. Wait, those are identical, except for this one being slower and available to Marines. The AOS. Okay, whatever. I don't care. And the M60A1 ERA, but with slightly better ammo because it has a later introduction date. Also, as you might, well, actually you might not notice because you can't see the model on the video right now, but this definitely does look like it's a much, much better model, especially, pay attention to this gun, right? Looks like a normal gun. Now look at the gun on the current ERA, right? That is not 105 millimeters. So yeah, it's evidently a new model. Exports, 040. So, let's speed this up a bit, right? Those are just Leopard 105s, Leopard 1s essentially with 105mm guns. Various improved stats, be it armor package that is actually unchanged. Optics updated, range and accuracy, stabilizers, etc., etc. Mark III is an interesting one as it has a 120mm gun and an extra MG. It's also a prototype. So basically those are going to be Leopard 1s with somewhat different stats, but presumably still accurate, good RPM, low armor. If also a 1A2, which you already have in the game. There it is. Pretty basic. And the Ariete. Same gun as the 040 Mark III, but other than that, we don't really know. From what I gathered, it's not really on the same level as a 2A5, M1A2, what have you. I'm gonna assume maybe it's something like Logim, right? Maybe something on that level. We shall see, right? Reconnaissance. Recon Jeeps with the 50 cal, alright. Bunch of Fiat variants with 20mm, which is basically this thing here without the grenade launcher, which is fine, right? It's basically looks, right? It's the mobility might be a bit different, right? It's maybe a bit faster, maybe a bit slower, but 2 front armor, 20mm autocannon, and the Fiat was 100 kmh off-road and 50 amphibious, so it's probably gonna be like a faster looks. 90mm has the Cockerill gun, which we have on this thing here, the V150, which again probably is gonna look something like this. Amphibious, good off-road speed. Again, the KM900 had 100 kmh, so presumably the Fiat does as well. And with pretty much the same gun. They compare to an AML90, but given that we already have that exact gun on a 2 front armor vehicle, it's gonna look something like this. But of course, in the recon tab. So I got optics and stealth. And then a 60mm variant, which is actually a wheeled HVMS. It's like a very high rate of fire, good AP accuracy and range, kinetic gun. AP rounds only, according to them. And it's a prototype as well. Now in the recon tab, we get Leopard 1 and 2 recon, which we have in the basic variant, so it's gonna be a recon variant of this. B1 Centauro Rico. So we got something like Roycat AMX 7 Vickers in the recon tab from 1990. Now, from what I gathered, all the Centauros, at least the one in time frame, have a 105mm gun. This is also 1990 and does not mention prototype. So what we might get is something like this, but with like 16 AP and full range or something like that. Armor, speed, I don't know how it's gonna compare, but it's gonna be a bit scary. We have Rico's rival Jeep in the vehicle tab. Okay, now this is the interesting thing, right? These two things here. R76, again, that is the Yugoslav Jeep that is also in command Jeep. With the MLRS. Can only fire in direct fire support, right? This means it's basically gonna be above Raketage. There's 2 variants, one on the Jeep, one on the Fiat, and they're prototyped. But we're gonna get more Raketage goodness, and you know what? No, scratch that end. I'm not gonna say more. Again, I don't want to get interrupted. If I speak, I'm interrupted. We have I-tow Jeep. We have a basic tow on an M103. We have an I-tow on a VCC. Sorry, on a VTC, also an M103 presumably. And then a VCC Tour. Tow 2 missiles on the VCC-1 APC, which we'll get to in a second. Basically an up-armored M103. C1360, which is basically an HVMS, but in the vehicle tab, so no optics and no stealth. Or worse optics and stealth. And then Centauro, non-recon. Transports. Now this is also very, very interesting. Because in the first blog post I did mention this. There's no IFVs. None of these APCs, none of these transports has something bigger than an MG. We have a truck, we have a Fiat, LVTP, M113, the Camillinos. Is it Camillino? Camillino? I think it's Camillino. I don't know. I had a bit of Italian in school, but I'm not sure. Actually. Hold on a second.
Camillino.
So you pronounce the L. Maybe it's Spanish or you don't do that. I don't know. Camillino. 2 variants. basically up-armored variants. Sounds like 2 armor and 3 armor, with the 2 armor one being amphibious, the 3 armor one not. So very good 5-pointers, presumably. And then the Protetto, which is an armored truck, rig transport, right? No IFVs, no autocannons, no heat guns, nothing like that. All of the transports have no noteworthy guns. Now that doesn't mean that they're useless, as we all know 5-point transport spam is very strong, but no IFVs. And as you'll see, it is by far a much bigger deal than it sounds like. Unless you already think that, in which case, yeah, it is a big deal. Alright, helicopters and planes. Let's skip the small talk and get to it. Command helicopter, Chinook supply helo. Alright, cool. Transports, AB-205, which is a Bell 205. MG, basic transport. AB-412, Twin Huey, unarmed. AB-412 Grifone, same as the 101 MG. And the Chinook. Again, no transports with significant weaponry. No rocket pod helicopters as transports. And no helicopters with ATGMs as transports, which I guess there's only like 2, which are the Heinz. I don't think there's any other transport helicopter with ATGMs, is there? But again, no autocannons either, right? Just MGs. Not as big of a deal for helicopters, but still worth pointing out, right? No Panthers, no Lynx H7s, nothing of the sort. Recon units, unarmed, okay. This is gonna be exceptional optics, presumably, as radar vehicles will get exceptional optics in Wargame. Something like the Razid. The VAB Razid. Is it VAB? No, Razid is the German, the Fuchs Razid, right? No, hold on, where is it? No, the VAB Razid, yeah, there it is. Right, exceptional optics, it has a radar, which you can't see because the blog post is covering it, but trust me. Unarmed Recon helicopter. Oh yeah, A109 is like their own helicopter, right? That they developed themselves, right? So it's a unique indigenous helicopter, which is this thing here. And then we have one with 250 cals and 14 70mm rocket pods, which is this one presumably, as there are rocket pods. So a lightly armed Recon helicopter might be pretty good. Those tend to be very valuable because they're still cheap while having some sort of weaponry to just deal with, basic helicopters might try to sneak around that you don't want to, spend anything on, or something like that. Or single infantry squads. And don't underestimate twin 50 cals. The twin 50 cals on the Hera, for example, that thing goes ham, right? It says only one of it does have 2. That thing wins against the autocannon on the Gazelle cannon, by the way, right? This is an autocannon. As you can see, it's garbage, right? Horrible accuracy, but it's an autocannon, yet it still loses to double 50 cals. So yes, it's not an autocannon or something like that, but do not underestimate 250 cals on a helicopter. Dedicated attack or gunships. We have a Huey with 2 small caliber Gatlings and some, okay, who cares. A109 with 4 ITOs. Doesn't tend to be too bad. They tend to be very cheap, so don't underestimate helicopters like that. They're not going to be like big and fancy, of course, but do not underestimate the utility of something like that. Then we have the 2 Mangustas. 1 gunship with 8 TOW2s and a few rockets. Gotta keep the price down, but yeah, it's something, I guess, right? I'm pretty sure Mangustas do not have stealth. They're not like tigers, right? So keep that in mind. Then we have this Mangusta. Yeah, that's pretty funny, I know. Which is a better one because it has a 20mm autocannon, as we can see here in the picture as well. 4 stingers and more rockets. So this is gonna be basically very, very similar to its FIE. In fact, it is pretty much identical, at least from the weaponry. We don't know which stingers. It's presumably going to be Vulcan, I reckon, but who knows? And we don't know, of course, anything about its HP, its speed, and optics, right? Which, especially the optics, could have a big deal. I'm going to assume it's going to be fast because it's a modern helicopter. They tend to be fast, at least in Wargame. Right, all the Tigers, they're all like 280, 260, whatever it is, but 280 upwards. So I'm gonna assume it's gonna be fast. HP we will see. Optics we will also see. Medium optics would be a big deal. Do not underestimate having medium optics on helicopters. Planes. They have plenty of F-104s. One with 4 MK-38s, sorry, 83s, which is the same payload as the Tornado IDS, and 2 AIM-9Bs. Oh god, what plane has AIM-9Bs? There's so many AIM-9 variants in Wargame. There we go. Which is a pretty low-end SRAM. So it's gonna be basically similar to this, with one more bomb and some MRMs. And the F-105s are, yeah, same speed. We don't know anything about ESCM. We shall see. It might just be a cheap spam bomber. F-104s. ASA 1 and ASA 2, they're going to be the ASFs. AIM-7F Sparrow, which I think, for example, is on this thing. 40% ECM, sorry, accuracy is not the best, but with 4 AIM-9Bs as well, this might be very cheap, so could be able to get like 3 upvetted or something. In which case, it might not be too bad. Not as like a main ASF, but having like 3 of those at high vet for relatively cheap, be like a pretty good secondary ASF. Don't underestimate stuff like that. ASA 1 has the new Aspide 1A long range air to air missile. And the ASA 2 has Fire and Forget Hydras, which are upgraded ones, I believe. So we don't know exactly what those stats are going to look like. According to Greyhound, the Aspide 1A is basically the same missile as the PL-11 on the J8C, in which case it might not be too great, but who knows? Who knows? But plenty of F-104s. There's also going to be Tornadoes, A200 multi-role, with 2 M9Ls and 5 cluster bombs. Not too shabby. 5 cluster bombs isn't the biggest deal. They're Rockeye 2, so they're not going to be like big cluster bombs. They're just going to be basic cluster bombs, right? 6 AP. Not some of the big ones like 8 AP on the British one. ECM should be pretty decent. Basically, I think none of the Tornadoes have less than 30% ECM, so I think that's what we can expect here as well. Seed variant of Tornado, I can't talk, holy smokes, which is going to be basically an ECR without the AIM-9s. Going to keep the price down, which is cool. And then the ADV, which is pretty much going to be this. 4 9s, 4 super temps. It's also prototyped. Not like it matters, because the Tornado 3 is unprototyped, but G91, old fighter with 4 napalm bombs. I'm just gonna, given that it's old, I'm just gonna assume it's gonna be slow, but yeah. Speedier variant with 2 AS-20s. We have the AS-30 on the Super Etendard, the AS-30L, as well as on the Buccaneer, just the AS-30. I think the AS-20 is... Hold on. Might already be in game. Where's helicopter? I'm in a naval tab. Why can I not see? Am I stupid? You know what? Let's go like movement. Oh, because I'm at South Africa. Mm, helicopter. We have the AS-20 somewhere here. We do not. The AS-15. We have it on a plane. AS-34. We do not. All right, but I thought it was an anti-ship missile. Either way, seems to be pretty mediocre. MB339, which we also have already in one form for ANZAC, which is not the fastest, but a plane with rocket pods. Already featured as name as for ANZAC, as I said. What is the? It's an Impala. Is that a different plane? Yeah, it is. I guess maybe they're like both trainer planes or something like that. They look similar. Either way. And then we have the Ghibli, which is this thing here, with two M9Ls and two Paveway 2s. Who does like a Ghibli? Mm. Paveway 2s, they are, I believe. So Paveway 3 is the big one, the 20 AG one. Paveway 3. Paveway 1 is the 10 AG one. Or Paveway 2. But it says GPU 16. There you go. Yeah. Anyway, those are, I'm pretty sure, 15 HE, or like 500 kilogram laser guide bombs, which is 15 HE in Wargame. So, payload wise, this is going to be very similar to the Cheetah D2. This thing here. The two AIM-9Ls, which are very similar to the Darter as well, except they have 4 HE. Also seems to have a gun pod, which they don't mention at all. They never mention any of the guns, by the way. So, yeah. And we also have a Harrier with two AGM-65E Mavericks, which is a semi-active 30 AP1 that we can also find on the A Hornet. So, and two M9Ls. Do we have a B Harrier? We do. Oh, it's yeah, this one also has E Mavericks. So it's basically gonna be this with worse M9s and only an equalizer. And yeah, so basically slightly cheaper than this, I assume. And that's it. That's all for today. We hope to share the release date very soon. So still no release date. Yeah, let me know what you think. Of course, everything is linked in the description if you want to take a look at it yourself. And hopefully by the next time I make a video like this, we will have a release date. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye bye.